Hello, Resurrection students. It's Megan from Resurrection Leewood. Not too long ago, I found a mouse in our house. I was just minding my own business, watching TV, and I swear I saw something just run along the wall. I tried to ignore it because my dog was sitting with me, and surely he would have gotten something if it were there. So I just kept watching my show, and then I saw it again, just something out of the corner of my eye. So I called to my husband, Mike, I think we have a mouse. He didn't respond, so I took matters into my own hands. I started jumping on top of the couch that it was hiding underneath, trying to scare it out. Nothing. I grabbed a pool noodle and scooted it behind the couch. Nothing. And then all of a sudden, I see a little thing scurry out of the front of the couch, and I jump back on the couch screaming for help. Approximately 35 years later, at least that's what it felt like, Mike came in with some mouse catching supplies and saw me literally frozen in fear of this tiny little creature. I was so annoyed with him for taking so long. It was probably only 2 to 3 minutes, but it felt like 15 because I was in the midst of a tiny mouse freak out. And I mean tiny, not much bigger than a ping pong ball. Actually, here's a picture of it. It was just a little field mouse. We named it Squeaks. In Explore, we've been learning about the stories of Abraham and Sarah, their son Isaac, and their grandsons Jacob and Esau. Like God promised, Abraham had many, many descendants. His grandson Jacob had 12 sons. Abraham's family is known as the Hebrew people, or Israelites. However, famine came upon the land God had promised the Israelites, and they had to seek refuge in Egypt. Now, about 400 years later, they are no longer living as honored guests in Egypt. Instead, they have been forced into slavery. This is the first time we read about the people of Israel being enslaved, and it isn't because they did anything wrong. It's just because the people of Egypt took advantage of them. So the Israelites are pretty upset, which makes sense. They came to this land for protection from famine, and now they're enslaved. So they begin crying out to God for help. In the Bible, we read this in the book of Exodus. The Israelites were still groaning because of their hard work. They cried out, and their cry to be rescued from their hard work rose up to God. God heard their cry of grief, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked at the Israelites, and God understood. You know, speaking as someone who hides on the couch waiting to be rescued from a field mouse, this is a hard thing for me to read. Because to me, when you just read those words, it's like saying, I hear you, and I know you're afraid and hurting. I understand. And good luck with that. And that's it. Where is the exterminator rushing in to save me from the mouse? Who is going to save the Israelites from their enslavement? God, what is the plan here? When Mike came and saved the day, rescuing me from the field mouse, I was grateful at first, with immediate annoyance. I asked him questions like, what took you so long? Did you even hear me? Why didn't you answer when I called? And he said, I didn't hear you at first. I had my headphones in. But then when I did, I was getting supplies, so I could come up and be ready. I was so fixated on how long it was taking that I didn't even think that he might actually be working on a plan to catch the mouse, getting the supplies and tools that he needed in place. What the Israelites didn't know, but we do, is that God was working to put a plan in place. Right before this verse, we learn about Moses. Moses was an Israelite born during a time that the Pharaoh had decreed all baby boys be thrown into the river. But Moses' mom hid him in a basket and sent him down the river. He was rescued by the Pharaoh's daughter, and Moses would be instrumental in how God saves the people of Israel from enslavement. So why does all of that matter? Remember how I got really annoyed at Mike because he didn't come immediately? And he said it was because he was getting the supplies ready, so he was ready to catch the mouse? He heard me. He understood that I needed help. But to give me the right kind of help, it was going to take a little bit of time. And I think the same thing is true for God. The people of Israel were crying out to God, and what we read is that God heard and understood. God had already been putting a plan in place to rescue the people of Israel. Moses was born, and God had been working through Moses to prepare him for this time in leadership. Even though it probably seemed to the Israelites like God wasn't listening and God wasn't working, God was moving in ways they couldn't see. God still saw them. God heard their cries and was working on a plan to rescue them from their enslavement in Egypt. And just like God heard the Israelites, God hears and understands you too.